Hello, welcome to Bridges Presents Mental Health Mondays. Why also the streaming on YouTube also takes on just a little bit longer. I know you podcast channels pop up right away. So
Hello.
I'm not really worried about that. So welcome to Bridges Live Presents Mental Health Mondays. Every Monday we like to talk about mental health because that's what sometimes it just comes on like we have the Mondays. I've always disliked that term. But yet it's become synonymous with here we go again. And so welcome my guest, everyone, please, Mr. Kevin Russell. Oh my God, people, I gotta tell you, we've been trying to connect because our lives, and you're on the West Coast.
I am, yeah.
Yeah, see, us people from the East Coast, we could care less about your time. It's always our time, right? It's always Eastern Standard Time. It's never like the West. Every time you get an email, right, it's Eastern Standard Time. You're like, really? Are we like second-class citizens out here? Because we get up later?
Right, yeah. It's like, oh, these lazy West Coasters, always 3 hours behind us. Like, what's going on? Come on, it's 9 o'clock my time. What's going on?
You're like,
still asleep.
Yeah, like, what are you doing? Like, how come you're not up with the rest of the world? So tell me about the life you're living and what you're doing, because you're doing great stuff, and we're going to get right into stuff. But tell us what you do and where you do it and how you do it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's funny. I as we were talking there, about just the time difference, perception creates reality.
Right.
So if you're on the East Coast, my reality is this is my world. This is the time that exists. There are no other times. Okay. And then it's that hyper personal and that expansion. We'll get into all that. So yeah, I appreciate it. I right now I'm going under the nomenclature, the title of Consciousness Accelerator and Transformation Specialist. So I assist people in transforming energy and subconscious beliefs, limiting trauma, damaging, not even something that we're consciously aware of a lot of times. We've got layers upon layers of conditioning and programming really embedded within the system that drive so much of our behavior, so much of our reactions, are down to our existence, literally, 100%. And there are a number of factors that come into play with the challenges and opportunities that are within that entire equation. So yeah, West Coast, United States. I've been doing this work as a self-practice for a number of years. Onboarding new tools and new ideas, new approaches as I've gone. Started off with breath work early on. I grew up surfing, so I was always wanting to expand my breath capacity.
Okay, so are you a Tommy Curran guy? Tell me the type of... Yeah, come on.
All right, so... I came up in the early 90s. Okay. So I'm in that next generation. So I'm more of a Slater, Hobgood Brothers, East Coast.
Those floaters. When Slater came across with those, I surfed, right? I surfed in Hawaii every day, and I grew up. So I grew up in the 80s. So Kerwin was my guy, right? When he started riding that lip on top of the thing and then doing this drop down. But when Slater started to do that floats across the thing, done. Yeah, it was over. Right.
And it's funny. I always took from different places, like Tom Carroll's snap turn at pipe.
Right.
Like that contest,
just that
like 80s.
big, huge kick. Oh my God, that whip.
Yeah. So in general, the guys that were just ahead of me were the Rob Machados, San Diego boys. So and I'm goofy foot. I'm right foot forward for those who don't know what that means.
My friend was a goofy foot, and I was regular, and he grew up in Huntington. So So I went out there, surfed with him, did Long Beach and Santa Monica. Yeah.
And you guys had it down because you could split the peaks. You're both going, So I started with, I was just like in pools. Like I'd go to a pool and I just, practice breathing. So that introduced me to breath work organically, and then got into some really more challenging mental exercises in my late teens when I started to go through, some personal crises, some, identity crisis. Who am I? What am I here for? What if I wasn't here? And started really reconciling those questions for myself on the inside. 20s, started yoga, started meditation, and that was kind of a vehicle that took me a distance. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, my wife and I really hit a juncture. We hit a nexus point in our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to each other. And it was really our daughter that ended up being a litmus for our own expansion. And she was starting to express anxiety through a nervous habit, and it was picking at anything that she felt as a blemish, to the extent where we were putting Band-Aids on at night and to go to school. It kind of looked like she had chicken pox, and we're like, oh my gosh, what do we need to help our daughter? What's going on? Serendipitously, or within confluence, my wife also had a friend at the time who was in a state of dis-ease or crisis, dis-ease as I like to say. And she had hurt her back in a hiking accident. I think actually fractured a vertebra. Physical therapy, everything short of surgery, nothing would do it. So in her mind, the only other option was surgery, because literally everything else that any doctor, any specialist had provided or presented just wasn't doing it. And ended up getting back surgery against two doctors recommending not to.
And she got it anyway.
Got it anyway, because we look at the menu of options that are available to us in modern medicine, and it's expansive in some areas and very limited in others. And at the time where she was, with her mentality and her awareness and the information she had, she went with the surgery, recovered from it. Back pain was as bad, if not worse, than before. Ended up finding a practitioner out in northern San Diego County who was a Western MD. He has his medical license. He's been practicing he's a general practitioner for about 50 years, I think. And along the way, he also started to augment his practice with different methods of inquiry into the subconscious.
Yeah, he came over to the other side.
He really did. He really was bridging that gap. And the beautiful thing was he was assimilating both into his practice.
Absolutely.
He wasn't negating one or the other. In short order, come to find out from the information they were getting from her system that her back was actually the pain, the debility, literally in bed, laying prone because she couldn't move, was primarily due to dis-ease or unhappiness within her marriage. She'd been married for 20 plus years, and there was a lot that she had experienced that went unspoken. Things that she didn't feel was maybe her place based on the relationship dynamics, or getting into gender dynamics as well. And it was just all of this stuff just kept compressing and cementing and really sedimenting down on top of the wholeness and the peace and the ease and the freedom that's within all of us, and creating this pain loop. Worked with this doctor within, I think, I can probably count the sessions that they had on one, maybe two hands, and the pain disappeared, completely went away. Once she identified what the issue was, expressed what the issue was, brought her partner into the conversation, and said, "Hey, listen, something has to change, because business as usual is not. My body feels like it's breaking because of this." And now their relationship has flourished. She's completely out of pain. She's practicing similar modalities as Kelly, my wife, and I are. And that was really our start into this accelerated portion of our journey within the last 5 or 6 years.
I'm so blessed, in short, and people who have heard me speak on my Mental Health Mondays and things I do, they've known my journey has been beautiful, long, and continuous, and yet sometimes scary, because I tried to commit suicide at one time. And healing through those traumas, and it had nothing to do with what I knew. I was just coming from a military standpoint, PTSD. I was so traumatized, really after 9/11, actually. And in short, the words that were being used, because I was a special soldier, so the words that were being used about terrorists this and killers that, and I told people after it's said and done, when I called my rebirth, I said, the things that you call those people is what I felt, because that's how other countries call us. Yeah. Now, you use it because we're part of your country. They use it because we're not part of the country, and vice versa. So I very much internalized that feeling. And then I was like, so why am I even here? Because the person you call friend or partner is you're using those words of killer and terrorist. And I never saw myself that way, But I guess you're right. You know, I mean, if you really want to put what we do on all what we do, I'm not talking about for who's right and who's wrong, but the facts of what we do, and you're going to call this a terrorist act, then I am a terrorist.
Yeah. And it's wow. First of all, I'm so glad you're still here. Because this experience, I mean, this experience that we're all having is benefiting from you being here exponentially. And so it does take a certain amount of bravery and almost obstinance to not flow down that path, to arrest that flow. And I think a lot of it is challenges abound, but a lot of it for me, especially with those examples, are the zero-sum perception or perspective of life.
Yep.
Which, in my mind, doesn't exist. We live in a spectrum of contrast, from the lightest lighter to the darkest dark, or the most brilliant collection of colors to the most muted tones. So there are no absolutes. Everything is subjective or connected to something else.
And only the human condition puts in absolutes. Because the universe doesn't put us in absolutes. And so as I got into my neuroscience and studying and moving on to even where I'm going and wherever I'm going, and we understand that there is a conscious component to this. We do understand that there's a genetic disposition that gets miswired because of the trauma and historical trauma that keeps reliving inside the body on a cellular level. And that's what I start teaching, the epidemiology of it, and start teaching the coherence of what you're actually applicating in verbiage and speech. And that's what I want to get into today, because we can get into so much, is that this world is misspoken. And I'm not sure if they understand the full coherence of the energy they're putting towards the talk. They're saying something, and I know they mean something, but do you understand the whole completeness of what your energy is putting behind the words you're using? And I don't think they do.
I look at it either they do, and they're so disconnected from themselves,
that they don't feel it.
Right.
Okay.
Or they don't. Because if you do, then it's almost self-regulating. If you do realize and recognize, and you are connected to your own energy in a positive way, to your own wholeness, underneath the conditioning, programming, and all the trappings and everything, all the world stuff, it's really hard to. For me, it would be almost impossible to speak and say a lot of things that are being spoken now, and not have it physically affect me, it impact me, right? So let's say benefit of the doubt. They know the powers that be, the people that have the microphone, so to speak. They're not aware to the depth at which the words and language they're using really impact, because something starts off inside as a thought or as a belief because of generational influence, because of the land where the family, the conditions we're brought up in, we're experiencing. And then an idea or language gets embedded as a belief, and then the belief gets expressed most often more vehemently, more intensely, because we've intensified these thoughts and embedded them as a program within us.
But we're not, here's the thing. It's almost like humans forget that we're organic. Yeah. If we were talking about something mechanical, if we were talking about trifens, right? and the type of curl of the edges of the bevel of the board, then we can get into taste and feel. Yeah. But we're organic, so we have this movable force that's always moving, right? It's perpetual motion. So unless you are Edward Bernays and you realize that you're trying to get people to smoke more, so you say the things you want to say, so you delve into the human development and the human psychic, and you play on that. Or, like you said, those people who know what they're doing to get you to buy the product they want you to buy because of the things they say, the people they show you, right? And they're conditioning your visual cortex into all the brain and firing all these chemicals. And yet, then you have other people, like you said, they don't know. But then why are you arguing? That's now I'm confused because you're saying that you just feel this way, and I ask you, well, where does that feeling come from? I don't know. I just do.
Right.
I'm not sure. Wait a minute. That's not really an answer. It's not like you're a Ford car. You're like, I just have an engine, and that's just what I do.
Well, and it's funny, and I'm really glad you used that analogy because at that level of interaction or engagement, a lot of times we actually are like the car.
Right.
Because if we get something presented to us that isn't completely aligned with maybe our worldview or our beliefs or something like this, and this is at the general level. I know there's a ton of us out there that are doing the work to extract ourselves from these entanglements or to energetically, not involve ourselves in
It's not that many.
Yeah, right. Small but growing, right?
Because my God, I wish there were more. We got millions, but we got.
Here's the rub for me, and I draw parallels to the heliocentric view that we had of the universe, of the solar system, where for thousands of years, maybe hundreds of years, once we started putting labels on it, it was the Earth is the center of the universe. Mm-hmm. And then we have some very observant people come along and start quantifying and qualifying and testing. It's like, I don't think this is true.
Yeah, I think there's more.
and then you get imprisoned for the rest of your life for thinking these things. The challenge is that we are taking the same view of ourselves as we did about the solar system. Mm-hmm. We are taking a very heliocentric view of ourselves, thinking we are not part of the natural systems, to your point. The biology, we are multifaceted, and we are 100% embedded in this physical experience. But that is not all we are, and that's where the opportunity comes in. Right. We can experience this life and really be self-directed in ways that we're just starting to scratch the surface of, from a subconscious, superconscious, consciousness, energy, physical, emotion, mental, everything connected standpoint. And the problem is we've been living life as if we're the car. So then when we get into those reactions, it is a reaction. We are not in our conscious mind.
No, we're on the lowest rung of our thinking. We're still so far back in our old survival part of the amygdala that we call the reptilian brain, and people have heard that and stuff. We're still walking on our knuckles when it comes to this.
And there are those that understand and orchestrate things. To your point about the psychology of advertising, the biology of belief, which is a wonderful, expansive book that I highly recommend everyone check out. So there are those that understand that there can be color, message, image, theme manipulation in media. And it's much more effective if there's a low-grade state of fight, flight, freeze mixed in there as well. That's why if you look at the news and you've heard the old idiom, if it bleeds, it leads.
That's right.
Because that's going to create a visceral response in the viewership. And you're going to be glued to that set because your defense mechanisms are activated. We got an adrenaline dump going. We are in that limbic system, in that lizard brain. We're in fight, flight, freeze mode, even, fawning mode, not in this example, but that's kind of one of those reactive states. And we are back to that, kind of like very survival, like kind of low on the Maslow's hierarchy level of needs basis. And we can't expand anywhere from that standpoint.
I get into when I write things, my wife tells me sometimes, honey, you're writing over people's head. And I'm like, well, let them just start reading more. It's not my problem, right? And she's like, no, you got to speak to a broader audience. And I'm at fault, not because I want to jump on people's heads like kangaroo. But if you're still operating and wanting to, now I think it's a want, that you're operating in such a low-level state. At this time, 2021, after COVID, if you didn't pull back your chest and say, I'm broken, I'm sad, I thought I was, I'm not. I thought I will, I haven't. I thought I was going to, I can't. All those words that you might perceive as negative was an opportunity to say, okay, let me reevaluate. Because if this was a business deal, if you're one of those corporate people, you always say, well, let's reevaluate that. Well, why don't we say that all the time? And if you're a sports fan, I always say, what type of management team do you have?
Yeah.
Right? Like, who are you talking to? Like, what is your ownership? You're the owner. Who's your coach? Who is your general manager? Are you winning games? Because we didn't. Because a lot of us didn't win last year, right?
Right.
So, and it wasn't just because of COVID. It realized that we wasn't playing the game that we thought we were playing. So,
in so many facets, yeah.
Right. So, why is this such a hard hit in the head saying reevaluate?
Yeah. So as you're talking, I've thought back to a parable or a short story that I've heard. It's the story of the elephant. And there's a guy walking through a forest, and it's in Asia where there's still elephants in the forests. And he's walking by a gentleman who has the elephants. He's tending to the herd. It's his herd. And he sees these massive full-grown elephants being held in place with basically a piece of string, like a small rope tied to a wooden stake pounded into the ground. And he's walking by and he's amazed why these elephants literally just don't walk away. Because, elephants can knock trees over without even breaking a sweat. And this little rope isn't going to do anything. So he asked the handler, like, how do you train them? How do they stay? He says, well, what we do is we use the same size rope when they're very little. So when they're that size, they can't break free. They can't go do anything they want. They pull and they'll try until they get tired or bored, and then they'll just accept it. And this acceptance at that early age is really all that's needed for that tiny string that really has no bearing on any type of resistance or impact once you grow up and get older. You just think that this is where I am. This is the space and the spectrum in which I exist, and nothing exists outside of myself, because this rope that I remember being so heavy and so immovable is still with me. Therefore, there's nothing I can do. So I'll just keep doing what I've always done.
So, and I love it. And that's so true because, people, if you're listening, thank you first, we're talking with Kevin Russell, and I'm Dr. Paul Bridges Live. But the noise you're hearing is my puppy playing with his chew toy like he's mad at me because I haven't played with him. That's exactly, I've never heard him play with his chew toy this much.
I love it.
That's why when I talk about to the black community, the African American community, the minority community, whatever the hell you want to say, you're so traumatized by the past that it has kept you tied to this string. And until you get help, you put someone on your team, you put someone in the general manager spot, however acronym, whatever you want to say, you got to get better. Not fix, because you're not broken. Right. Stop thinking you're broken, because you're not broken, but you can get better. Yeah. So we have to understand that you go get checked out.
Yeah. And that's another challenge with the subtlety when we're talking about energy and really looking at health from a holistic health from a quantum standpoint, is that there are layers and there are depths to it. So we have the collective and we've also got the individual. And you'll see this a lot of times with individuals who they are, for whatever energy or things were in place, parents were saying the right things at the right time. They did get love. If there was a one-parent household, that parent, wore the hats of 5 people, or if it was a 2-parent household, then the children were getting what they needed. So there are no universals.
No.
Everything is hyper individual. And to your point about why don't we change, there are pockets of insulation, energetic insulation in different communities in parts of the world. I mean, I was shocked to hear that there's still sundown towns in the United States. And so it's not that, an energy will transform and change. It can't be created or destroyed, but it can evolve.
If people don't know what a sundown town is, shame on you, but here's the short is. where black people cannot get caught in a town after sundown, otherwise not good, healthy things happen. That's a sundown town.
You can work in the town.
You just can't. You can't stay there, right?
Come sundown, exactly.
Yeah.
So to your point, there are, I mean, literally 400 years plus of trauma that have been carried, transformed
on all of us.
All of us,
right,
across the board, and that's the other thing.
Right.
Energy is not selective.
No, it's not like you. And
right.
You.
Right. And so, and I always, liken it to, one person's bee sting is another person's, inconvenient bee sting is another person's deadly interaction if we're allergic. And so two people can be in the exact same experience. And to get, the name of my book and company is Radical Enlightenment. So to get a little radical, at the end of World War II, Auschwitz was liberated. And as they're doing the outtake and really examining what went on there, they found scrawled above a bunk, God will have to beg my forgiveness for what he is allowed to have happen here. Mm-hmm. On the other side of that coin, they were doing an outtake interview with a gentleman who had survived. And they were kind of asking questions like, what did you do? There was so much oppression. He said, nothing any of those Nazis ever could have done would have ever touched anything of me. That is me and mine alone. You can do whatever you want to this vessel. That isn't even touching me.
Right.
And so it's an extreme example, but
he's right. He's right.
The opportunity is up to us as individuals. And it does help to understand the collective energetic components that go along with it. And so the traumas that have been predicated and passed down are still being passed down because, to your point, we're really conditioned away from looking at it collectively on both sides of the gender spectrum.
We do it with homelessness. We literally do it. People walk by, and because I watch people because I love watching human conditionings and development. Yeah. People walk by, they used to turn away. Like, I don't want to see. Now, they're so dismissed, they just walk by.
Right. Like, yeah, which is almost worse.
It's worse.
It is worse.
It is worse. Like, at least you had some type of consciousness of
some type of a reaction.
I don't want to see it. Now it's like, you don't even come in my periphery.
And again, multifaceted. Yeah. We've been because it's so prevalent. It's everywhere. So we become less conditioned or conditioned away from it being bad. It's almost accepted now. And
so I have my Hufflepuff wand here.
I love it.
Yeah, because I put on the sorting hat and on this little thing, and I would be in Hufflepuff. So if you could change it all. It's not about fixing. Would it be, what would first have to take for this? And I'll let you think about that for a quick second, because I went to Auschwitz because you can go through it. And before you go through it, me and my buddy who I used to surf with, Mick, we were in the service in Germany. Mick started to break down. We held each other right as we entering the thing, and then they have these little windows of what they used to do with the Jewish hair and teeth and whatever. And we were just crying. We couldn't catch our breath, and the tour was going forward, and we looked at each other like, should we go through this? We're like, we cannot not.
Yeah,
because there are people who live, but let's go remember the people who passed. So we went there to try to just soak up this energy, to try to get them home, so to speak, and get them out of these concrete walls and these flooring. And it's been years, right? This is 80 something, and it's been full 40 years. It's there's no remnants of anything except for these artifacts and stuff. But the walls were breathing pain.
Oh yeah. So here's another part of it.
Right.
Locations carry energy. And I mean, I haven't been to Auschwitz. I had a very similar experience, but I visited Gettysburg when I was younger.
Same thing.
There is a weight
Yeah.
of that location.
Yep.
And it's like a heavy blanket of air
Absolutely.
that is just immovable.
Unmovable. I was there. I did the same thing in the fields in Gettysburg.
Yeah.
If people go to Gettysburg, you get to see the battlefield and all this other stuff. I was in the field with my my prayer beads, just praying for like an hour. Because these people, doesn't matter why they were here, they died, they suffered, they lost. Yeah, same feeling. Huge heaviness. And I couldn't understand why people are laughing. And my wife is holding my hand like, let's just get through this. But I want to be here. I want to feel this. And I'm just, it's getting heavy and heavy. It's like it was trying to take every breath out of me. And then I would see a family and, they're taking pictures and they're smiling. I'm like, am I not getting this? Or what is going on?
Well, and so there's a lot to unpack in this and just in these examples that we're using right now. And some of it has to do with I term it our degree of expansion. Mm-hmm. If we have expanded beyond our physical form and we've brought into awareness, our personal awareness, that other people are having as rich and equal experiences in their own first-person player video game. Right. In their own best actor or best actress nominated role of that lead character. Recognition. It's a term called Sonder, which is a beautiful term if nobody's heard it. It's that recognition that everyone is leading their
complete life,
lead life.
Yeah.
And we're not even a bit player in the majority of people's movies.
Right.
Not everyone is there. So if we are very much within our space and we're very much kind of going by the numbers that we're taught or by the rules of the family or the community or the society, then we will experience things within that level of expansion or that level of energetic connection. Once we have experiences, to your point about contemplating or trying to transition out of this experience, I, in no small part, am a huge fan of rock bottom.
That's exactly because it cracks it open.
And there's a couple of things. One, if we don't hit rock bottom, if we don't get to that point of, okay, I'm open, what else is there? Because whatever I've been experiencing isn't working.
Right.
We're still in free fall.
Right.
It hasn't gotten to that level of dis-ease on the inside to where we are like ready to push the barriers away in whatever form they take and say, no, there's something else. There's got to be something else. There has to be something else.
I worked in a rehab, and I'll let you worked in a rehab unit and gave classes for rehab. And in my class, I always like to be real with people. And I said, I'm telling you guys are in the best place because all of you are all screwed up. Yeah. And you know it. The court told you. Your mama told you. Your intake valve told you. Everything in here. The reason why you don't have any socks and shoes and laces told you. So guess what? It's up from here. So let's put in the work.
Yeah. And a lot of times it is that we need that whatever that thing is to springboard off of, to project ourselves in the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. And again, everything is subjective. One person's rock bottom could be flubbing a job interview.
Right.
Or getting fired from a job. Another person's rock bottom, it can literally be in the gutter with a needle in the arm. It's subjective and it doesn't matter.
And I just don't want people to have to almost transition. For them to go, I think there's got to be a better way.
And this is the great irony, is that it's by no means a requirement.
No.
Unfortunately, it's most often the expression, again, going back to that conditioning, because how often have we heard in celebrated media and in family life, if we're masculine leaning, boys don't cry, pick yourself up, dust it off, wipe away those tears. If we're more feminine leaning, oh my gosh, why does everything have to be so emotional and dramatic? Mm-hmm. So we're kind of damned if we do, damned if we don't on both sides of the equation as far as expressing and excising these energies that we experience, every single one of us, because it might make someone else uncomfortable, or mom and dad weren't raised that way. So, no son of mine is going to be, or no daughter of mine is, or whatever, however it expresses. So we're putting these governors, we're putting these limiters on our energetic system. And then we're wondering why we have these explosions of mental health crisis, physical health crisis,
these microbursts.
Spiritual. Exactly. Yeah. We're not enabling ourselves to push that pressure release valve and have a good cathartic, like full body, ugly, snotty cry and let some of it out. So, going back to your question, how do we start? What do we do? I think the first thing, and this could be a challenging thing for many, is recognizing that everything we do is a choice, whether we recognize that it's a choice or not. Just because we're doing what our system's always done doesn't mean we're making the same choice over and over and over again. But it is kind of that definition of insanity. We're making the same choice expecting a different outcome.
But I'm not sure if people know the choice they're making is the same one.
Exactly.
Being a practicing Buddhist, that stage of the wheel, they're not sure where they're turning.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And that's why I always go back to just ask for help. Yeah. Because just often enough, there's going to be a certain key thing that we may do or help you with that's going to trigger that breadcrumb, and it's going to be like, oh my God, right? I've done breath work where I release people's energy out of them, but you have to be strong enough to do it, because when people try it, basically I'm taking it in because I'm able to take it and release it, right? So it's poison coming into the body. If I don't release it, then it's poison that stays in my body. And there has been clients when they have seen me release, and they were like, what is all that coming out of you? That was all of you.
Right.
Now, this doesn't last forever, because as soon as you hit your car and hit the highway, you could bring this right back.
Right.
But now we can start the work here, so you can start building that, not resistance, but that expansion of health.
So one part I always encourage people to start at is recognition. In awareness. We have to be aware of the things we're feeling and thinking and experiencing on the inside. And it goes back to that early life conditioning. We're conditioned away from feeling things. We're conditioned away from expressing ourselves, like, that the whole children should be seen and not heard type of thing. And so we're up against all of that. But if we can get to a place of recognition, and for me, this actually started with my own contemplation of ending it. I dealt with my own personal blend of trauma when I was early adolescence, and I went to traditional talk therapy, which at the time was exactly what the doctor ordered, and it gave me this awareness of who's thinking these thoughts. To your point about getting behind behind the message. So I had this awareness at a relatively early age. Went through high school, was about to go off to college. And then the fall of my senior year, I had this thought pop into my head, like, well, what if you weren't here anymore?
Yeah.
What would it matter? And it stopped me in my tracks, because I was like, well, yeah, what would it matter? I was like, not much.
Not much. Because
but a lot.
No.
Yeah. Not much to many.
Really?
And maybe a lot to a few.
Yeah. And that's even subjective. That's like,
exactly 100%.
Really?
That's probably ego in play right there.
Right.
And so instead of pushing the thought away or just, oh, no, don't think that. Oh, that's dangerous. Right. Which is so often where we get stuck. We get stuck in the resistance. And then this is where these thoughts start to loop and gain energy and gain strength. So instead of that, it was one of those, like, I kind of turned to myself internally. I was like, oh, really? That's where you're going? All right, game on. Let's go. I'll take this further than you ever could. Right. So I allowed myself in my mind to go through that thought exercise of, okay, what if you did? How are you going to do it? And so it was, and I never owned a gun, and I was like, I had it in my mind. I had the gun. I was in my room, and I took the action, and I followed it through, feeling how it would feel. I was not letting myself off the hook one iota. I was like, nope, we are handling this right now, self. Like, I'm not getting away with it. And it was a lot of resistance going into it. And I just kept pushing through these veils of fear and resistance. And I had one of the, like, purest just outpouring. I think I actually screamed. And then it was just this outpouring of energy. And I moved through to a post-death expression of consciousness. And it was just peace. It was peaceful nothingness in the most beautiful expression. It wasn't lonely. No. It wasn't empty. It was rich and full. And it was everything and nothing at the same time, not to get, too waxing poetic. And that was that next step of discernment and recognition of, I've got more space in here than I ever had any idea of.
Yeah, right.
And so I was like, okay. And then, I just like all of us, you shouldn't do that. You might fail. You can't do that. You're not good enough. You're unworthy, unloved, whatever the underlying messages are, they're expressed in these self-limiting, self-debilitating beliefs or thoughts. And I'd gone through iteration after iteration through my 20s and 30s and into my 40s of pushing through these barriers. Recognition. Nope, that's not me. That's my system trying to protect me.
Yep.
All right. And then I started gaining practices to accelerate the distance between and really diminish the impact that these thoughts and feelings had on the inside. But again, and to your point, whoever's listening, wherever you are, if you're listening to this, you are in the perfect place.
You are right now.
You are in the exceptional place right now to try something new, to increase your awareness of your own life and you as you're living your life.
I'm going to add on like a sandwich, and this is not going to be a big sandwich. This is going to be a Jersey Mike sandwich. It's going to be fast and quick, right? I want you to reach out to someone. I know people say they're busy, therapists are busy, clinics are busy. The internet is just, reach out to Kevin, reach out to myself, reach out to us and say, I tried, who and where and what. We have resources, we have connections and friends and family. We have people that you can touch with. Don't do this by yourself. Don't do it.
It almost can't be done by ourselves.
Well, it's scary. I've written 7 self-help books. Yeah. I did it because I love to write. I did it because I wanted to share. And I don't even agree with self-help books. Because here's the problem. We read it and we figure like we can try this.
Right.
No. I would never read how to fix a car. And just go like, open up my hood and just start banging away.
Right.
We wouldn't do that with our own vehicle, no matter how many diagrams or YouTube. I wouldn't do it. So why would you do this to your own mental self? It's impossible. Even breath work.
Right. And a big part of it is because, again, going back to that early life conditioning, we're conditioned to have a belief or understanding that the answers are somewhere outside of us. That, somebody else, Dr. Paul has the answer or somebody else has the answer. And it's the same thing. The book I wrote, it was as much of a flow state download as I've ever experienced. And it all came out in 2.5 weeks. And as I'm writing it, as I'm channeling these things, I'm thinking the exact same thing. I'm like, I can't believe I'm writing a self-help. Are you kidding me right now? But, it really was written in the intention of it being a handbook, handbook for life. Yeah. So it's a reference guide.
Right.
Check it out. What sticks now? Put it in that back pocket. Check it out another year. I guarantee the same thing is not going to hit. It's going to be something else. And in there, I have a line that I say all the time: take what you need, leave what you don't. Because at the end of the day, we are the pilots, we are the captains, and nobody has any idea. I mean, we're having this very connected, very conscious, very, very just in the moment conversation. I feel like I have a good understanding of who you are. I feel your energy. I have no idea the experiences you've had in your life.
Right.
And nobody else does except for the one that experiences it. And so I think if we can honor ourselves and recognize that we are our best teacher, we are our best advisor, we are our best insight tool, and there are helpers abound. And help is not always going to come in the form of a person.
Right.
It could come in the form of this podcast.
Yes.
It could come, to your point about, more that the Satori experiences in Zen Buddhism, those aha moments, those light bulb moments, those putting it together moments along the way. This isn't about one big, like, okay, the building on the hill, or on the horizon, that's where it is. It's like, no, it's the breadcrumbs, to your point, along the way that add up to the sandwich. We got to collect the breadcrumbs, put them in our back pocket, and then just are these still the tools that work for me, or do we evolve and do we change and do we keep progressing as we're moving through these expansions, as we're pushing through these veils of resistance and fear and anger and resentment, or however else they're expressing. And we're really the only ones that can. Nobody else can push through these veils for us.
No, and no one can force you to push through them.
Exactly.
And I think in this time, as a black man in the United States, with the racism as a constant verbiage now, it's not so much, we're not talking about it. We're just using it as sound bites. But to feel it, no matter if you are of anything in the system or society, if someone's just using it as verbiage and not really talking about it, there's still a negative response that your body's having about it. So if I'm homosexual and I'm just using gay words, because I think I'm using the words, but we're not really openly talking about it. Mm-hmm. Like, it affects me. Yeah. Because I'm being talked about. Right. I'm not being talked to.
Or with, yeah.
Or with. That's different. Being talked about and talked to or with feels, they're three different things.
Oh, 1,000%.
And we're constantly talking, but we're not talking to or with. We're
saying a lot, but we're really not having conversations.
Right. And we keep saying, we need to have those conversations. Well, we're having those conversations, and other people are still not having conversations.
And a lot of times, and again, now we're going back to, control and manipulation and agenda. And it's like, what is the agenda with the two people that are having the conversation in the larger studio sense, if we're talking mainstream media? We're talking about the thing as if it was, again, as if it's like this, as if it's a car. Have you seen
with accessories?
Oh my gosh! And it's like, and there's dismissal, and there's embrace and dismissal across the board.
Right.
Oh, it doesn't exist anymore. Oh no, it's prevalent. It's everywhere. It's baked into the fabric of society, and it's like, yes, and I think if we can shift to, instead of thinking we know anything, shifting to a place of open and curious. If we're in a family, and I had this, not to age myself, but I jumped onto TikTok last year, 2019, and during lockdown and everything, it was a really great opportunity to connect with my daughter, because we were sharing funny stuff that come across the feed. It was also an amazing tool that showed me the front lines of what was going on in cities across the country, with reactions to George Floyd's murder, with reactions to different militarization, and mobilization things that are going on. But without having this lens that really invites us into people's experience, and just coming at it from a talking point or the soundbite standpoint, we're just perpetuating. We're not changing anything.
No, right.
So perfect example, Paul. I have no idea what it is like to grow up as a black, or as someone having a dark-skinned experience, a black experience in America in late 20th, early 21st century. What the hell is that like?
Yeah.
And what can we do to improve it? I don't have the answers.
No, and what's upsetting is we're still talking about the same thing for 58 years now. I mean
150. Exactly.
The March on Washington was in '63. The Civil Rights signed in '60, and we still haven't done anything. It hasn't gone anywhere. So that didn't work.
This is the opportunity and the rub for me, and this is one I've been working on since I kind of came to a lot of the perceptions or perspectives I've come to, and I've been trying to figure out how we can do this at the collective level.
Okay.
And I haven't come up with the answer yet, because it all boils back down to that individual.
It does.
If there are individuals carrying hate and resistance. And if we go beneath hate and anger, it's fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's all fear.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go below fear, and it's, let's say it's unloved,
Mm-hmm.
or it's unworthy. Because we are born into this world as beings of unconditional love.
Right.
If you ever look at one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in my life was taking a walk with my daughter right after she learned how to walk. I think so my wife and I used to push the stroller and, do like the 2-3 mile walk in the evenings. And then she started walking and strollers were out because she was going to do it. And we would still go for an hour or two walk, but we maybe go 20 yards, 30, 50 yards.
Still felt like beautiful.
Because every rock, every snail, every ant, that cloud, those leaves, everything was just like, this is amazing. Oh my, look at this, look at this. Getting back, and we are all those still same children. Mm-hmm. That energy has not gone anywhere. We've just layered shoulds, need tos, have tos, conditioned behavior, programmed resistance on top of that.
And I'm thinking of certain neighborhoods, certain people, certain places. There's been layer of shit on top of them.
And it's all part and parcel, 100%, and like those sundown towns, there is energy that's been created that is indelible, and it's being perpetuated by those that are there. Mm-hmm. Same thing in different communities, in impoverished communities across the world. If our basic needs are not being met, we are going to take action into our own hands to establish some type of a survival that makes sense for us. And that's when all bets are off. So, please, let's take this with a grain of salt. This is really high-level stuff. And, all of our basic needs are met. We're not in an abusive or a dangerous situation. And we have some space and the luxury of having these thoughts. However, many of us that come to these places have been through hell and back.
Yeah.
And it's up to the individual to define what they're going to do with these experiences. We can let the outside control and define us, or we can move through those expectations or perceptions and limitations, starting with that discernment, starting with that, and it's all internal. Is this resistance, hate, fear, whatever it is this is this me? Is this me?
Yeah, that's just such a great thing. Is this me? It seems so simple in words to say, but when I did it in a class, and I had people close their eyes and actually use your breath and say those words, it connects such a strong feeling to the heart, right? Is this me? Those tonations and tones. You could say yes, you could say no. But
and then another good one, is this fill in the blank mine? And if not, whose is it?
Yeah.
Where did it come from?
Yeah.
Why am I feeling it?
Right.
So it is this inner anthropologist where it's that open and curious. Okay, I wonder what my system's going to serve up to me today.
The discovery of self.
Discovery of self. If we recognize, or if we have somebody hold up a mirror and say, listen, you are a horrible cuss most of the day. You are miserable to be around. If that mirror is held up and we just look straight through it, we're not going to change.
Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror.
There you go. The other opportunity is to take a reflection that we get externally and run it through with non-attachment. Okay, this is somebody else's perception. Is this me? No, this isn't me. Well, then how could they have been getting these thoughts? How can this be their experience?
Right.
Well, I am pretty quick to, I guess I do have kind of a short temper. Okay. If I don't get sleep, or if I don't get, whatever the condition is. Okay. Recognition. It's the starting point. And this is the other challenge, is everything's involved. So getting a bad night's sleep is part of it.
Right.
Not getting enough, healthy nutrients in our body is part of it. And so many of us live in food deserts or nutrition deserts where
their body's starving.
Body's starving. The vessel is starving. Yeah. And beautifully, I'm seeing, I'm seeing vacant lots in neighborhoods being repurposed for community gardens across the country. So change is happening, but it's not happening at scale. And I feel like that's where a lot of the frustration comes in. because and again, going back to that equation, can we affect the collective without changing the individual? And I haven't found a way that works yet.
I'm gonna have you on more with your time permitting on
I
Mondays whenever you can come, and I'm gonna leave people with this thought. And I've been asking people this thought: do you think the revolution's coming, or do we have the ability to stave it off with good practice? Because we talked about this with environmental, right? Mm-hmm. The earth changing. And we've been talking about how we're at a breaking point and we're at a no turning back. I think we passed it almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I think now it's just a decline, period. Mm-hmm. It's just really after that one of these big shelves broke off like 10 years ago up in the Antarctic, I was like, okay, it's done. It's a wrap. It really is. Now it's a we can slow it down, but we're already at a no turn, right? What about the revolution? And that's blood in the streets. I'm not talking about revolution like, government change. I'm talking about where this all blows up.
So I think, I look at it more of an energetic revolution.
Okay.
And the only place that can start is within. And this is where we get into the nuances of energy, where if we're fighting the thing that we are opposed to, we are resonating at that thing's energy. So we're actually adding more kindling to that fire. One of my favorite Renaissance individuals from last century, his name's Buckminster Fuller.
I agree. One of my favorites.
He's got a quote that says something to the effect of, we cannot change the system from within the system. In order to change anything, we need to create a new paradigm. We need to create a new model that makes the old model obsolete. And the only way to do that is inside. Because if we're still harboring these fears or fighting tyranny or fighting racism even, we're still resonating at the energy of these things that we perceive as negative. So how do we extract ourselves from that dance? How do we extract our energy from that? One, we have to look for a new model. There are those who are going to be resistant to change no matter what. So it's not for us to necessarily change everyone.
No.
It's for us to change ourselves. And so that's one side of it. So the revolution, I think, has been in place. So, I mean, if we pull back out like macro, like million-foot view, everything that humans have experienced in this recorded timeline have brought us to this juncture right now.
Correct.
We've all been reconciling and practicing, and there's been slavery and subjugation and pain and destruction and torture and all the negative. So if we look at it from the entirety of human civilization, with everything going on right now, we are still, with all the disparity, with all of the lack, with all of the imbalance, we are still at the most peaceful, most prolific, most abundant time in human history.
We are.
To your point about nature, I'm not worried about nature. She's going to be just fine. This planet has been
doing it for a while.
It's been through some cycles. Planet's going to be just fine. Whether or not we are as well, that's because, again, we are resistant to change. Well, this wasn't how it was 50 years ago. Why is it happening now? Because change is constant. Embracing change is one of the most powerful things we can ever do. And so the Earth's going to be just fine. We have opportunity abound right now to make rapid shifts in very short order. But there are powers that be that are very resistant to that for any number of reasons, for any number of motivations. So if we're focused on the external, we're resonating at the fear, that's all we're going to get.
And we will never expand.
Ever. Because literally that's the tailpipe that we're sucking on. We are just taking in these fumes of dis-ease that are emanating throughout, based on agenda, based on not knowing, based on whatever the factor is. So all we need is the crack in the door. All we need is that crack in the window on the inside to start creating an entirely new reality for ourselves.
Which is why humans are so amazing.
We are literally the most powerful creators in existence. And we have created, individually and collectively, everything that we're sitting in right now. And we can create our way out of this as well. The opportunity and the challenge is that it starts within. Kevin, and that's the only place it can start.
I appreciate our time together. I'm happy. And it's good talking with people, and I talk to a lot of people, and it's just good having connections and relationships, because that's what we are living in, is in a world of relationship with ourselves and with others, like you said before. 100%. And I'm just so happy about this relationship. Thank you so much.
Paul, I can't thank you enough. It's been, seeing your work and connecting, and then this conversation and some of the ones we've had previously. It's just, I'm looking forward to more, and I'm very grateful for what we've had to this point as well.
Thank you. Please, everyone, reach out to Kevin or myself if you have any questions. Kevin, want to give you email or anything like that? Well, you can.
Yeah, radicalenlightenment.com is the best place to see what we've got going on, to learn more. There's a lot of media there. There's a lot of information and a lot of opportunity. There's a quiz you can learn more about yourself, ways to dive into the subconscious, ways to really start being much more self-directed. Social media links are all there, and happy to have a conversation or add anything to it that I can for anybody that reaches out that's interested.
We'll be back here next Monday. Kevin, if you're able, join us, please. I'll be here. And thank you, everyone, for listening to Bridges Live Presents Mental Health Mondays. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kevin, so much. Kevin, stay on, and we'll talk off.